Okay. Hi, my name is Joseph Malone, and today we're going to be discussing the three primary reasons why inflation is so high in 2022. And we're also going to be discussing what we can do about this really high inflation, how can we navigate, and what can we look forward to expect in the future as far as these unstable prices that we're seeing in the new year. So first, I would like to establish a bit of my credibility on this topic. I am a historian. I am a product child of actually two um, certified public accountants in the state of Texas. And I have studied the markets very intensely. I am a stock trader. If anybody knows me from my previous lives that I used to do, I invest in the markets heavily. I understand the markets, and markets are the same. Doesn't matter which market you're talking about, a real estate market, a stock market, or a wholesale market of fish. It doesn't matter. Markets are the same. They're going to act in and they're going to operate based on supply and demand. And so I've studied a really wide range of these markets, and I've studied the public policy and the physical policy that has intertwined in all of these different market dynamics that have gone on. And so, saying all that to say, I think I'm a pretty qualified person to talk about these things. And I say that because there's a lot of people who are on YouTube talking about all these kind of things, and they don't probably have necessary background to really be discussing some of these things in depth. So where are we at with inflation? So inflation, according to the Consumer Price Index, this is a government tracked metric that the national government uses to track inflation year over year. They go month by month. They release the report every year. The last report that they released in May, they say that inflation is at 8.6% year over year. So we're talking from May 2021 to May 2022. They're saying year over year inflation is at 8.6%. So we know, because we live in life, right, that this is not an entirely accurate metric, because we're looking at gas is double from what it was a year ago. We're looking at some food items that are double from a year ago. And so this idea of inflation being at 8.6% is not entirely accurate. But even if we go with this metric that the government uses, they like to go for a 2% rate year over year. So we're way over that 2% rate year over year, and we're at close to 9%. So inflation is kind of getting out of control. And so the government is doing a lot of things trying to get it under control. But we really need to understand, I think that it's very important to understand the dynamics of something and why something is happening before you can work towards a solution to what's going on. And so that's what we're going to do in this podcast right here. So the biggest reason why I'm gonna approach this idea of inflation and why things have been increasing so much from a different perspective than probably what you have seen on YouTube. And I watch a lot of these YouTubers. They're bashing the Fed. They're bashing, President Joe Biden, and those entities, they have their responsibility and their blame in the problem. But superseding that, I think the biggest reason why inflation is as bad as it is today is because true cost has been manipulated. So I'm going to talk about this idea of true cost in the next slide more, but idealistically, healthy markets reflect the true cost of a good and service. So what does that mean? So in a capitalistic system, capitalism idealistically, speaking idealistically, and when I say idealistically, you can just imagine I'm saying in a perfect world. So in a perfect world, capitalism is supposed to refine itself over time so much to the point that things get cheaper, so this reverse, this matrix kind of thing that we're seeing, where prices are actually increasing, is a sign that something in the system isn't going right. Something's off, because capitalism at its nature is to refine itself so much to the process that is almost to perfection when capitalism is ran properly. So something isn't right. So something is out of balance. Something is not going on right. So I'll give you guys an example. Earlier this year, I actually just moved out of my parents' place. I spent 5 years at my parents' place. I saved up a lot of money while I was there, while I was in college. And, I was like, I'm 23 now. Like, I want to get out on my own. I want to have my own place. I'm tired of living by my parents' rules. Even though I could have stayed there longer and enjoyed free rent and whatnot, I wanted to have my own place, my own rules, and kind of hold my own as well. I'm a man. I got to hold my own. So I started looking for houses to purchase. And, I was kind of like, at the time, I was like, well, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to rent, because you're kind of just throwing money away, which I'll talk about that in a whole nother video, because I feel like renting, like people say that renting is throwing money away. I don't think that it's throwing money away. But I was looking for a home earlier this year, and I was continuously all the homes that I liked. I was continuously getting like outbidded. So actually, the highest amount that I got outbidded was $50,000 for a house that nothing like intrinsically changed about the house, other than the fact that the person just wanted the house, and so that they were willing to pay an extra $50,000 so that I couldn't get it, and so that they could get it, right? And so this is a common thing that I've been seeing going on. I actually was talking to a friend of mine who her parents were purchasing a house, and they were actually outbidded $100,000. And so the problem with this is that when you look at the intrinsic value of the home, right, from the listed price to the price that you paid, did anything change? And so that's what we're looking at when I'll connect everything to inflation, but did anything change? Did they redo the roof? Did they redo the sidings? I mean, did they go in and redo the electrical? Like, what more value are you receiving for this additional $100,000 that you're paying? And so that's the question that's going through my head as I'm being outbidded. The seller isn't offering anything else up. Only thing the seller's coming to the table with is, yeah, I got this house that everybody wants. And so, you know what? I'm going to hold out because, hey, I got this guy who want to outbid this other guy for $50,000. I got this other guy who want to outbid him for $100,000. You know what? I'm going to hold out till I get the best offer. So nothing's changing about the house. And so for me, it was a situation where I'm like, I am not going to pay. I'm too financially savvy. I got too much financial sense to go and pay an extra $50,000 for something that really probably isn't even intrinsically worth the list price, which we'll get to that in a different topic. But that's an issue as it pertains to inflation, because it's feeding this human emotion of greed. So greed has a lot to do with inflation, and we'll talk about that after we discuss this idea of true cost. So true cost, right? Let's kind of put that idea that we just talked about to the side for a second, and let's discuss true cost. So true cost, the true cost of anything in life, it doesn't matter if you're talking about the cost of a relationship. It doesn't matter if you're talking about the cost of working a job. It doesn't matter if you're talking about the cost of purchasing a good or a service. The true cost of anything in life is what you have to give up to get it. So this is a great principle to kind of think about in life. If maybe you're in a relationship, you're like, man, well, what's the cost of this relationship? The cost, I'm always unhappy, I'm always sad. But anyways, so the cost of something, the true cost of something is what you have to give up to get it. So let's give an example. I gave an example in the slide. Let's say you want to purchase a $200 TV. The cost of the TV is not the true cost of TV. So the $200 that you're exchanging in that transaction isn't the cost of the TV. No, the cost of the TV is the working hours that you have to give up to get that TV, right? So if you make $15 an hour, you're roughly at probably you have to work about 15 hours. You have to work about 15 hours to purchase that TV. So that's the true cost. So you gave up 15 hours of your life to purchase this nice, shiny, big flat screen TV, but you had to give up 15 hours of your life to get it. So that's the example of like true cost. So getting to this idea of greed, let's say hypothetically speaking, I'm a home builder and I'm building a house and I need to get the house. I'm at the point of the house where I need to get it wired up for electrical. And I call up the contractor that I always call up. So he gives me an estimate, comes out, looks at everything, gives me an estimate. He says, oh, it's going to cost this much. And I'm looking at the price because I build houses. I'm like, well, why is it this much now? Like, what's going on? What changed? And he's like, man, that's just the going price. Like, that's just how much it costs, man. So then I start calling other companies. I'm like, I don't believe him. He's full of crap. I start calling other companies, and the quotes are very similar. Everybody's charging like 20, 30% more for their services. So I'm like, what's going on? Like, nothing's changed, but they're charging more for the services. So greed is playing into inflation, because if I'm a home builder, I mean, I'm already in the process of building this home. So I got to get through with the project. So I got to pay him, even though, I feel like he's overcharging me. What it looks like is the market value for his services is what he's saying that it is. So I got to pay him. But I already know, if I'm in the business of building homes, I already know what my profit margin is. I already know what I want to make. So I ain't letting nothing, first rule of business, you can't let nothing interfere with profit, right? So all I'm gonna do is pass that increased cost of this electrical bill. Hey, that extra $2,000-3,000, we gonna factor that into the cost of this house. So basically what it does is it trickles down, right? It trickles down. It trickles down. The past just continues to get passed on and passed on and passed on and passed on until it eventually can't get passed on no more, right? So that's what happens. That's what causes homes to increase, because the cost of production to produce the home is costing more. So homes are increasing because of that. That's an example as to like why greed can sometimes fuel inflation, because there's nothing intrinsically that changed about your services, but it appears that all the electricians have got together and they said, well, you know what, we can make more money for our services, so you know what, let's reestablish this market and let's charge this for it. And so they figured, okay, well, we can make an extra 20-30% on each job we do. Hey, that's good. But the issue is now, because you want to make an extra 20-30%, the builder, he's not going to let that impact his profit. And now the consumer, the person who purchases the home is going to have to ultimately pay more. So that's the thing. And so then greed kind of just spirals out of control, because the electrician, he's like, okay, well, I can charge 20-30 more for my services. Oh, well, the plumber comes in. Oh, well, the electrician's making 20-30% more. Well, you know what? The plumber, he's like, you know what? I should start charging 20-30% more. And now he's charging you 20-30% more. Then the AC guy starts charging you 20, and then that adds up. And then you start to see that in the price of these homes. Okay. So this is why greed can be kind of a dangerous thing, because there's no reason to charge more for your services if you're making a healthy amount of money on a particular endeavor. Then there's no reason to charge more. But supply and demand drives the market, and so if there's a lot of demand and there's not a lot of supply, there's not a lot of plumbers, there's not a lot of electricians, then they have the ability, because there's so much demand for their services, to kind of charge whatever they want. So greed can be a very dangerous emotion, that can cause inflation. Another thing that we see is speculation in the market. So everybody, this is the number one real estate agents. They love to say this. Oh, the price of the home. This is the best time to buy a home. It's always the best time to buy a home, right? Doesn't matter if you're in a recession. It doesn't matter. It's always the best time to buy a home. But you ask a real estate agent. So they're gonna tell you. They're gonna say, oh, well, the price is gonna keep going up. Price is gonna keep going up. Everybody believe price gonna keep going up. Same thing in the stock market. I've been telling people this on this channel for 2-3 years now. Everybody thinking stock's gonna keep going up, real estate's gonna keep going up. You're speculating. You have no basis for that evaluation other than your emotion and your belief that it's gonna keep going up. And so because of that, people continue to put money in something and they continue to prop it up, but then it gets to a place where people can't afford this, and so now they're questioning, like, is it really worth this? Like, we have houses here in the Houston area. Some of these houses are in terrible areas and they're going for $400,000 or $500,000. The people who live in that neighborhood cannot afford to pay that kind of money. And even then, even if we're not even going to talk about the new construction, that just the tax evaluation, because if you're going to evaluate this home, this newly built house at $500,000, well, what does that do to the raggedy house that's right next door to it? Well, this tax evaluation, if this one $500,000, and hey, this tax evaluation got increased at least 50%. The people in these neighborhoods can't afford to sustain those kind of property values, and so you're in a very highly speculative place, because some of these areas where these houses are really, really high, they're not even desirable areas. Like the example I was just giving you, where the house is like $500,000. I wouldn't even let my dog live in some of these places. I mean, not even just trying to be mean or funny, but some of these places be, I mean, you got to be on point. You got to be sharp when you walk out the door. You never know who might be waiting for you, you know? So it doesn't make sense, but speculation. Oh yeah, it's gonna keep going up. Yeah, it's gonna the area is changing. No, certain places it's like this. People have to understand. You can dress a pig up all you want, but that pig is still gonna be a pig. And that's certain places where you buy a house, because people buy into this idea of gentrification and so forth. So they say, oh, it's gonna keep going up. No. Some places will. It all depends on the location and geography and so forth, the amenities that are close to it and whatnot. But some places where they've been sold on this idea of speculation, it's not going up. I'm gonna tell you right now, it's not going to continue to go up. And actually, in this upcoming recession, they're going to crash. They're going to actually go really far down. And so there's going to be some really great deals. If you're thinking about purchasing a house, I would say wait a year or two, maybe three, and just let the market sell itself out. You might be able to get some really good deals, probably $100,000, $50,000 to $100,000 cheaper than what's being listed at right now. So speculation in the market contributes to inflation. And that all is impacted by the true cost, pretty much. People, or not true cost, but intrinsic value. People are paying more for something than what is intrinsically worth. So the second reason that inflation is fueled through is poor public policy. So public policy and fiscal policy are two different things, you know. So public policy is set by the national government. So we're talking about the Congress. We're talking about the executive branch. Those two entities are the ones who set public policy primarily. When you're talking about physical policy, you're talking about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a completely separate entity. It has no connections to the national government whatsoever. It is not supposed to be influenced by the national government whatsoever, even though that happens. The Federal Reserve stands on its own. Okay, so it has nothing, idealistically speaking, it has nothing to do with the national government. So as we look at the second reason why inflation is really high, we have to look at the really poor public policy that has been implemented by our president. Now, President Joe Biden, you know, I respect him. He has the utmost respect as the president of the United States, but the man, you know, he's just not a wise person. He has no wisdom. And so he's made a lot of really, really bad decisions that has led to the kind of inflation that we're seeing, particularly at the pump, where we're paying basically double for gas. So we'll talk about a couple of things. The biggest thing that he's done is he signed an executive order, basically saying that you cannot do any kind of drilling or oil and gas work, or any kind of leasing or so forth on federal lands. And so you guys, I welcome you to do your own research. I've already done it for you guys though. But production, oil and gas production in the United States, about 24% of that production is done on federal lands. So by President Biden basically saying that you can't do any oil and gas drilling and so forth on federal lands, he just took away 24% the oil and gas production in this country. And so that's contributed to the prices. Now, yes, we have some geopolitical issues going on in Russia and Ukraine and so forth. But we are a very energy rich nation. And so he also withdrew the permit for the Keystone pipeline, which was a pipeline that was going to utilize all of that energy that we do have in our country. But he took away the permit for it, so that he killed that project. And so these are very unwise decisions because he's trying to run the country from an idealistic perspective, right? And so idealistically, yes, it would be perfect if we can run the country on entirely green energy. It would be perfect if we can get to a place where we were at zero net emissions. But practicality is very important when you're talking about being a wise leader. And practically, what you're trying to do, we're not in a place to do it. And so rather than President Biden renewing or shifting his perspective rather on oil and gas, he keeps coming up with these knucklehead ideas, like a gas tax holiday and like all of these cock-a-brain ideas, rather than just literally reneging on what you had prior, like reneging on your campaign promise, which was to kill the oil and gas industry. You have to make, sometimes when you make a bad decision, you have to pivot. You have to admit that you was wrong and change. And there's nothing wrong with that. But rather than doing that, he wants to point the blame at everybody else. Say it's the oil and gas industry's fault. If I'm the oil and gas industry, why would I make any investments in the oil and gas industry when you've already demonstrated you're not even supporting the oil and gas industry? So why would I go make some investments? Why would I go out and drill more? Why would I go and find new permits, new land? Why would I go do that when there's no support from the national government to do that? It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. So it's just the public policy has contributed a lot to inflation in gas, which has contributed a lot of inflation to food because everything involves transportation. How do you think these grocery stores get food to the grocery store? I mean, it comes in diesel trucks, and so the price of diesel is really high right now. So we're going to see these food prices likely continue to increase until gas prices kind of recede, because these companies, I'm telling you, even if it's like a sharp or a very like short, like a very minimal increase, these companies are not going to take on that cost of that increased cost of production. They're going to pass it on to the consumer. If they can't get some kind of tax break from the government or something, it's going to have to be something that happens where they can break even from this increased cost of production, because they're not going to take it on themselves. They are going to pass it on to the consumer. So public policy has a lot to do with the inflation that's going on in the country. As we were kind of alluding to before, fiscal policy has a lot to do with inflation. But it's not as big as like what people. That's why I have it as reason number 3, because everybody's saying the Fed, the Fed, the Fed, the Fed, the Fed. I said the Fed. The Fed's responsibility is to facilitate stable prices in the market. So they failed to do that. But the thing is though, for the Fed, and the reason why I placed them third is because the first two are things within our control that we can do. Us as citizens, we can decide, hey, look, I'm not paying an extra $100,000 for a house. I'm not going to do that. That's not wise. That doesn't make sense. Like, are you going to add anything in for that extra 100,000? Like, that's stuff that we can do, right? Or like with the president, with public policy, like we can elect competent leadership, and I'll talk about that as I get to the solution. That's stuff that we can do. The Federal Reserve, it is set up in such a way, like it is like so in like it, even though we see like they're connected to the national government, like they're set up in such a way like they have full autonomy. Like us as citizens, we really have no control over like what the Fed does. We do not elect any Fed governors. We do not appoint, like we have no, the Fed is a very autonomous group. So there's like nothing that we can really do about like what the Fed does. But the Fed does play a big part in inflation because the Fed has the ability to influence the circulation of money in the economy. So how they do this, okay? So it's two ways to do this. So they influence the money, they influence the circulation of money through interest rates. So interest rates, basically interest rates, you can think of interest rates as the cost of money. So higher interest rates, higher cost of money. Lower interest rates, lower cost of money. So that's how they kind of control the circulation of money, because idealistically, if interest rates are higher, if money costs more to get, then people are going to try to get less of it. They're not going to try to get something if it costs more to get it. You know, you're going to try to get, you're not going to try as hard to get, but if something is cheap, right? Like if something's cheap or free, like you're going to try, like everybody's going to try to get something that's cheap, right? So that's the idea behind it, of how they can control the circulation of money through interest rates. Um, the Federal Reserve also can control the circulation of money through the fiat, the issuing of currency. So the government has the ability, well, the Federal Reserve has the ability to issue currency, but not only like not by themselves. So they have to work with the national government. To the national government will issue a treasury bond, and then the Federal Reserve will purchase that bond, and they will take on that debt basically, because the Federal Reserve has no money, so they just take on the debt, right? So they're able to issue currency pretty much, and so they're basically that increases the money that's in circulation. So by increasing the money that's in circulation, let's go back. Let's take an example from COVID, right? So COVID 2020, everybody got these stimulus checks, right? And so they took these stimulus checks and they were spending it on things. They were spending it on things. And so as you saw, right, as the Fed was putting money into circulation, you saw these asset prices begin to like sharply increase. We started seeing houses sharply increase. We started seeing the stock market sharply increase. I mean, the stock market just recently took like a really crazy bull run, from probably 2020 to like 2021. Stock market was on a crazy bull run. And so they had a lot to do with the Federal Reserve injecting money into the economy, into these asset prices. And so they, people were speculating, saying that, oh, it's worth this and that. But the Fed, the problem, and here's how the Fed, let me get to how the Fed impacts inflation. So the more money you have in circulation, it's actually not a good thing, because our money isn't backed by like gold, right? So the money in 1970, our president Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. And so basically money at this point, money is just an idea. So it's like, we believe that $20 is worth this or that. So like, that's what it's worth. Like we have that belief, but it's really just paper. Like that's really just what it is. It has no, like, you can't go and retrieve this $20 for like anything. It's not worth anything. But it's an idea. And so the issue with having a lot of money in circulation is that all of that money is in these asset prices. So all of that money is in these stocks. Now we're seeing it starting to get pulled out, but all that money is in these stocks. All that money is in these houses. That's why you're seeing these $400,000 or $500,000 houses, because you got a guy. I'll give you guys a great example. My sister actually just sold a duplex to a guy about 6 months ago for $350,000. And she had only paid like $125 for it because she built it herself, but she sold it for $350,000. The guy, he had to have it. He was like, man, I gotta have it. So he bought it, and it's only a duplex, so it's only 2 units. And so he didn't do the cost analysis on it, and I mean, he can't make any money. When you pay like $350,000 or something, like, you can't make any money. But the reason why he was able to do that is because there's so much money in circulation. These banks are just willing to just give people money. Like this, they got so much money, they're just willing to give people money. They don't even care what you buy. As long as you can show some kind of proof of income, you got a W-2, whatever, you got your tax return, they'll just give you the money. And so, he went and bought this duplex. He can't even make any money on it. And then to make money on it, he has to increase the rents to kind of just even break even. And he's trying to break even, but as he's trying to break even and he's increasing the rent, the tenants that were there, they're leaving because they're like, man, we're not about to pay all this rent, to live in this not even nice area. So they left. Now he ain't got nobody in there. Now he done compounded the problem because now he ain't got no money coming in. So he taking on all of that cost. And on top of that, even if he does get some people to get in there and pay the prices that he wants to pay, he has no margin of error. If something breaks, if something happens on that property, sewage stops up, plumbing line breaks, he has no margin of error. He can't, everything has to go perfect for the next 30 years. Everything. He has no margin of error. He's not, it's a bad deal, but he shouldn't have bought it for $350,000. So, but this is an example of how when you have low interest rates, it enables people to go do stupid stuff like this. So that's how the Fed is supposed to manage these emotions of greed and fear by managing the circulation of money. And so they haven't done their job of managing the circulation of money, which has had an impact on stable prices in the market. Because you want to have a market to facilitate a healthy civil society. People need to be able to go to a store and know that like the price of bread, okay, is $3 a day. Okay, next week I go, it'll be $3. Next week I go, it'll be $3. People need to know what to expect from prices. You can't have these Jekyll Hive kind of prices where you got bread $3 one day, next day is $6, next day is $12, or gas one day is $2, next day is $3, next day is $5, next day is $7. You can't have these imbalances and these fluctuations in prices and have a healthy civil society. Eventually, at some point, as history suggests, people are at a breaking point. People are very close to a breaking point, and so the Fed understands that. I think at this point, that's why they're being so abrupt about raising these interest rates. But people will go crazy. If it gets to a point where they can't afford to feed their families and pay for food and stuff like this and keep a roof over their head, you will see some civil disobedience, unfortunately. But it all comes down to just really a lot of really bad compounding factors that we talked about in this presentation. And so here we are at the solution. Well, what do you do about this problem? And so the biggest thing is education. I think that when you're operating in a state of ignorance, you make bad decisions, right? For me, if I didn't have a background that I have in the markets and my parents being accountants and so forth, perhaps I might have paid that 50,000 extra or $100,000 for the house. Like perhaps I might have did it because I would have been like, I just want it, I gotta get it, no matter how I get it, gotta get it, So I'm like, perhaps if I didn't have that background and understanding and the education and knowledge, perhaps I would have did that. So education is very important. Something that's listed for $300,000 already in a very super inflated market probably isn't even worth $300,000, let alone an extra $100,000. So, anything you buy, you want to associate it with value and intrinsic worth, which is a concept that I'll probably have to break down more in another video. But you want to buy things that have value. You want to pay for value. You want to pay for things with intrinsic worth. And so, I just didn't see that in the market, and I said, nope, I'm not buying a house right now. I will wait. And I'm perfectly fine with waiting. So education is very important. You have to educate yourself, watching videos like this, watching other YouTubers, just reading financial education, financial literacy books. It will help you to be able to make these really really good financial decisions, because you might not look at it like this, but like one decision like that, like to pay $100,000 more, it has profound implications, because then a seller starts to look at it. He's like, okay, well, I got this guy to pay $100,000. Hey, I can find another person to pay another $100,000, another person, another person. Then the market is at an inflated point, and so now everybody's um paying this extra $100,000, and everybody's in a bidding war and so forth. um so yes, we, even though it's a micro example, has macro implications. So education is very important. I've seen this even in the car market. They had, I think a dealership had a car marked up $20,000. Hey, you think I'm gonna pay an extra $20,000? Now a house, okay, I'll rip some people up about a house, but a house, over a period of time, I mean, you can't lose buying real estate. Even the people who are buying it now at these inflated prices, I mean, if you have true wealth, I mean, you can't lose buying real estate. You'll never lose buying real estate, even if you pay over probably what it's intrinsically worth. You can't lose with real estate. But I've seen, man, these dealers got these cars, so many cars marked up $20,000. Man, you think I'm stupid? you know, I mean, it's a depreciating asset. That car ain't even worth the price, the MSRP price. You know, so you already at a bad place just purchasing the car. Period. Even at MSRP, you think I'm gonna pay $20,000-$30,000 extra just because I want it? Hey, man, you got it. I'll wait. I'll wait. So education, and I think education can help people kind of manage their emotions, because if you're ignorant, then you don't understand that, hey, like, this isn't a good decision. But if you know and you refuse to do better, then you're just being unwise. And I think the second thing that we can do is you have to elect competent and wise leaders, because this might be a joke that people laugh at for the rest of the year, but when you have a person like President Biden in office, what I want you guys to think about it is, I want you to think about it like this. Having a person like President Biden in office is like having a child and a gun, a loaded gun on the table, and nobody supervising that child. That's really how you got to think about having President Biden in the office. And basically, with the scenario that I gave you, anything can happen. That child can decide to pick up that gun and start shooting stuff. He might go outside and start shooting people. He might shoot himself. He might kill himself. He might shoot through the wall and kill somebody, his neighbor. Anything can happen. And it's not the child's fault, because the child don't know no better. The child is just, oh, I see something on the table, I want to play with it. It's the same thing with President Biden. It's not President Biden's fault. Like, he's unwise. He can't make good decisions, and it's not his fault. Well, it is his fault that he can't make good decisions, but it's not his fault that we elected him. We elected him, the constituency. We elected him. We put him in office to make decisions on our behalf, and he can't make decisions. And so, having somebody like that in office, I mean, things are going to get worse before they get better. We have to exercise our civil responsibility this fall, and in 2 years. But somebody like President, I mean, you got to get them out of there. I mean, honestly, if people had it, like, if we could do a recall would be very much needed in this time, because I mean, like I said, I mean, all we can do is we better just pray to God that nothing happens any worse, because I mean, it's literally like anything can happen. So that's where we're at. I think those two things, if we do those two things, we can solve inflation, because when you have people with sound minds, and you have wise people making decisions, they're not going to go do stupid stuff. And they're not going to allow gas prices to get out of control how they are. They're going to support the oil and gas industry. They're not going to support all of these foolish public policies that contribute to higher inflation, our national debt being crazy and stuff like that. They're not going to do foolish things while they're in office, because they're wise and they understand the implications of what they do. Um, so that's really their biggest important. That's a really big important thing. Those two things. If you educate yourself on finances, and you elect confident and wise people, that's what you can do to curb inflation. Otherwise, inflation is going to continue to get out of control because the person who created the problem can't be the person to solve the problem. Um, and the reason why is because their state of consciousness, whatever their state of consciousness is, led to like the situation that we're in. So whatever they thought it was okay to do what they did. So if they still in that same state of being, then they cannot get us out of the situation that they created. You see what I'm saying? Um, so we have to elect competent people. We have to elect people with sense, with wisdom and understanding about life. But we're going to see some really crazy times in the next couple of years, in decades. Things are going to get probably worse if we keep electing really bad people because they just can't make decisions, and they can't make good decisions. And you have to make good decisions if you want to have a good life. It's just the way it is. Um, so yeah, I appreciate you guys watching this podcast today. I really enjoyed creating it. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to all of the wisdom and knowledge I'm trying to impart into the world. But if you guys have any questions, I would love to answer questions. I'd love to hear any guys' feedback on everything. And until the next time, my name is Joseph, and I'm out. Peace.